I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Diane Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
Well, hello, my friend.
Hey, I love that we're coming on after your birthday. We can say that. And
I had another turn around the sun,
yay.
and this was my first one since mom passed away, and
Mhm.
so that had some feelings attached to it, which was interesting because she and I did not have, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but she and I didn't have a relationship like a lot of people. I know a lot of people like talk to their mothers every week or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, that's a
I
good
did not
topic. Mother and daughter relationships.
have a
But
relationship. I mean, we did
okay.
back in the day when I was in college. We were way too enmeshed with each other. We talked every day. I told her way too many
Oh,
things about my life, and then we had a situation where she shared a secret with my father that I had asked her to keep to herself. And I didn't speak to her for 2 years after that. We had a big blow up.
oh,
And
wow.
and
That's
then
that real Caribbean in you.
I guess I was pissed. I was so
Yeah.
pissed. Um,
hmm
and that was even still, that was before, I confronted my father because I'm a survivor of incest, and I confronted him in 1993. So this was 1990. And so then after that, when we started to come together, I was being very clear about boundaries and not getting
Oh,
re-enmeshed.
nice.
But we could go 6 months without speaking to each other very easily. She hardly ever picked up the phone, and I wouldn't either. And then social media kind of helped with that a little bit because we almost
Okay.
felt like we could be connected with each other to see what each other was
Mhm.
posting and doing and things, but not have to talk. So I really got more connected to her in the past 2 years because I've been managing her medical stuff. And
Mhm.
I didn't talk to her directly a lot, but I talked about her. So it was like
Got
conversation
you.
recent, I mean, I was having lots of discussions with her nurses and her doctors and other siblings about her medical stuff and about her. So it felt like I was talking to her a lot, but not actually talking to her, which, can be problematic as well. And the older she got, the harder it was for her to have conversations. She didn't hear very well, and the phone made it challenging. And so, so there were, I mean, I can count on more than one hand the times that she would forget to call me on my birthday.
Okay.
And
And ooh, and
yeah, I know. And it was interesting because, like, she would not kind of taking out the past couple of years, past 2 or 3 years.
hmm
Like, before that, she would like call me 2 days before, like randomly, and we would have
mm,
a long conversation that would last more than an hour. And then it was almost like in her brain, she just kind of checked a box.
like
And the birthday would come,
handle that business.
nothing,
Mm,
and I have to say it really hurt my feelings the first couple of times it happened.
uh-huh.
And so flash forward to this birthday that just happened, that is the first time that she can't call me. And
Yeah,
it was like there was a relief, on some
yeah.
level because I didn't
Because you're like, I know she's not here, so I don't have the expectation of hearing from my
right.
mother on
She
my
doesn't
birthday,
call,
right?
no big
Yeah.
deal because I know she can't. And
hmm
but interestingly enough, since she transitioned, I really haven't felt her around me. When I talk to
hmm
people about the fact that she just passed, they're all like, "Oh, she's always with you," and I believe in that stuff too. But I really
Yeah,
haven't felt her with me since she passed. I get the
yeah.
sense that she is out there just doing her due,
Doing
um,
living, yeah.
and which I'm not upset about. I'm not mad at. She deserves that freedom. She lived a trauma-filled life, and so I'm
hmm
happy that she is, if that is true, I'm happy that she's living the life maybe that she has maybe never felt like she could live. but I
Yeah.
did feel her with me yesterday. So
I love that. And so maybe she was like, ooh.
she was calling me.
And when you said this, I was thinking, I was just like, I'm wondering if like the 2 days before, my brain starts to like be curious about how and why people have the behaviors that they have.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, I'm like, well, maybe the 2 days before is because parents get to a place where they know that their young people, if they're not giving them the birthday party, are going to want to party with their friends and stuff like that on their birthday. So there's not really time to talk to them. Because I know on my birthdays, Mother's Day and my birthday are my days.
Mm,
I don't want to be harassed. Like
mm.
I don't, not, leave me alone, door closed, knock on the door. If I respond,
Yeah,
then we can engage. You know what I
yeah.
mean? But like those are days like, and of course you have children, and children will always do what it is, no, mommy. But on those 2 days, it's a designation of Mother's Day and my birthday are my days, and
Mm,
I don't want to do anything. So I could imagine, like my family members and stuff like that will send me a text on the day, but nobody's actually trying to call me because I
mm,
don't want to be
mm-mm.
called. Nobody's act because I don't want to because I feel like I have to put energy into taking care of people on the
Right,
days, and
right,
I don't want to do that on my days.
right. Gotcha.
So that I immediately went to that. Like maybe mom was reaching out, having these long conversations and checking that box so that because she knew that on the day you would be doing what you do for
Mm,
you on those days. I'm
maybe.
just giving other proposals. But the fact that she's not here and that she could actually ride with you on your birthday, there she did. You
Yeah,
felt her
yeah,
spirit and her energy with you.
yeah,
Yeah, and there's no denying her. If you hanging out with your people, she gets to be there too this time.
yeah. Well, the past two
Okay.
years, the past 2 years, I actually was down in North Carolina on my birthday. So my 55th and 56th, I spent with her. I was physically with her. And when I was there for the 55th, I remember thinking, I wonder if she's going to forget when I'm actually here. And she didn't. I was pleasantly surprised because, the past couple of years it's gotten harder for her to remember. Her concepts of time just was gone, and dates, and she just wasn't tracking things. So I wouldn't have been. I was almost I was almost thinking, she can forget when she's mentally and physically stronger than when she's not. I fully expected her to, but she didn't. So
Mm,
and it was nice that I got to spend the actual days with her. And
mm,
so that was nice. I mean, I continue to get in touch with the blessings of the last couple of years and how our relationship shifted. And I have a picture that I got framed. I found this in her. She has lots and lots and lots of pictures stored, and we were going through them after she passed. And I found this, and it's the only
yes.
picture I've ever seen of her hugging
Is
me.
it okay? I was like, is that her hugging you? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see it now. And I love the vibrant red. Yeah. Oh,
And it's the
okay.
only picture I have. I don't ever remember
Yeah.
her hugging. She wasn't a hugger. It didn't
Affectionate
just
in that way.
say I love you just out of nowhere. And so she's actually pregnant with my younger sister at this moment. We're up in Maine and just having a moment, a sweet moment together. And I don't have any memory of the actual memory except that I've now
Yeah.
sure.
That you have the picture of it.
I got the picture framed and have it up above my desk, and so um just to
A
remember.
reminder of tenderness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really got
Yeah.
invested that at the end of her life. The last
Mhm,
couple of years, her eyes lit up when I walked in the room. And I think
mhm.
I've mentioned before when we talked about right after her transition, and I had not ever seen that before. So that was lovely. And she told me
Yay.
keenly how much she appreciated me. And when I was, I just moved, for those who might be listening for the first time, just moved into a new place. And when I was unpacking some of my stuff, I came across cards that I had saved, that she sent me, and thank you notes after we went to great lengths to take her to the family beach trip, a couple of summers
Yeah.
ago. She sent a really nice note thanking us for, myself and my partner, for all the work that we did to get her there and to get her to dialysis and to take care of her and all the equipment. I mean, it was like moving a toddler. Toddlers have all this stuff that they come with, and she the van was so full we could barely move, you know, of
Yeah,
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
things because she needed so many pieces of equipment to be able to, you know, accommodate her anymore. And so yeah, I mean, one of the few times ever in my life that she would snap at me or be, you know, nasty for whatever reason, and the next morning she would reach out to me unprompted and say, "I'm sorry that
Mm,
that I was a little snippy with you last night." That just wasn't in her lexicon. So I feel very grateful, and you know, it was a weird week leading up, but then the day of
yeah,
was nice. So
that felt special. I'm so glad to hear that. And again, I apologize for being like mommy and missing the day.
oh, of course not. Of course not.
No, birthdays are so important. Cycles around the sun and just being witnessed by your colleagues and peers, on your birth is I know important and special. And so
You had a
we
fun
honor you. We thank
day.
you
Thank you.
for who you are. And then it also brings me to this question of having a cycle around the sun, being in the political, social condition that we are in this moment. How are you feeling? Like, what's your true feeling having had that, having had another day, birthday?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm very, very aware of how blessed I am. Like I said, I just moved into a new place. My partner and I moved in together, and it's a lovely house, and it's been lovely to put it together for the two of us. Financially, I'm stable. My daughter is grown and healthy and happy, and you know, I ain't got nothing to complain about. And because these past couple of months have been between losing mom and the holidays and then moving, you know, we came back right after her passing and had to start packing. I have not been as in the streets as I was before the you know, kind of all of the accumulation of mom stuff started to go down a hill in September, October, November. And so I'm struggling with I struggle with that balance of being grateful and happy and knowing that it's okay for me to be grateful and happy when so many people are suffering and so
Mm,
much is happening in this country. I am on Turtle Island, for those who are listening, otherwise known as the United States, um, and or at least this portion of Turtle Island. And you know, so struggling with that, feeling just immense privilege and happiness, and then feeling a little guilty about having all the happiness and the privilege. And so, yeah, that's a daily occurrence
yeah.
for me, I think.
That's a internal conflict, right? To have like this understanding the joy and the privilege of what you exist in, and then recognizing that it is a joy and a privilege that you exist in, that especially when we're seeing so many people not be able to have the resources and the accessibility, it does make you try to figure out like how you're existing. But it speaks to folks who are doing social justice and do have to take time for themselves to get themselves together, right? So, like, to take care of what happens when we lose a significant family member, to have to transition and move houses, to be having to put things in place. And sometimes we don't have the capacity to also be in the fight, even though there's this narrative out there that exists that says, there's no time to be tired, we
Right.
gotta keep on keeping on and all of that kind of stuff. The reality is that the only way that we can do that is we're making sure that we have like balance in our personal lives and spaces, and remembering that that's okay to participate in that,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking about the impact of the leadership that we are experiencing going across the globe at this point. What I am witness to is what folks are attributing language to, like efficiency um, and the value and all of these very heavy set words on existing in a very oppressive state, right? So like
Mm.
asking folks to come back into the office because provides more productivity when research and the data would offer and suggest that people actually give more time when they're outside of work because they're in the house and they're thinking about it and they're shifting their time. So you don't just get a 7.5 hour day out of a human. You probably get more like a 13 to 15 hour day out of a human. But being
Exactly.
able to have folks in a controlled environment has this narrative of being more efficient in telling people how and what to do and when to do it. But then you just don't have the same type of results in productivity as you do when you're exploiting much more from your workers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is interesting oxymoron that's going on that I'm thinking of you and your birthday and taking time for your family and taking time for you and feeling guilt around the accessibility and privilege you have, but the reality is that we do need to take care of ourselves in balance, regardless of how much, privilege we have. And it's really interesting juxtapose, and I'm joyful for you. And this is a funny narrative that we can like look at and have a comparison of, because I exist in the totally opposite. I mean, I haven't
Yeah.
lost my mother, thank God. We're not putting that in the universe, but but like what it looks like to be trying to figure out what resource is going to be like most of my sustainability comes from grants and things like that, and all of the folks who are existing in social justice work that survive off of it, not beyond being advocates in the work,
Mm.
survive off of doing the work, on grants and all of those things, and it being a moratorium through the federal government, money's not coming through. It has completely shifted what
Yeah.
my sustainability and like balance looks like. So I am on the complete opposite spectrum of
I know.
what you're existing in.
Yeah.
And and this is the type of thing that we continue to see, like when we're looking at our structures and like what is resource and like what is accessibility and what does that look like coming from the history of oppression that exists. This is what you have two folks that are probably very much similar in upbringing and education and all of that kind of stuff, but resourced differently from the historical existence and what wealth building could look like in the United States. That's
Oh
a
yeah.
very clear and real thing. And then that is something that is going to continue. The gap of those with wealth and everyone else is continuing to widen. And we see that like really, really very clearly. So my feeling in that is trying to figure it out, but trying to figure it out in a place that gives you the most comfort is
Mm.
very helpful. And so
Yeah. And
I
not
don't,
being
I'm hesitant to say that I'm in paradise because people are like talking about being jealous. But when I say paradise, it's paradise for me, and whatever paradise looks like for people,
right.
to try to like rebalance themselves, I think is important. You're
Yeah,
gonna say something.
and yeah, what the thing that stuck out for me in listening to you is the guilt piece, and to not be, where I've learned a lot during my awakening about white guilt, and was driven by white guilt a lot, and probably still am. I'm not gonna act like that's not a thing for me. And the resources that I have, the financial resources that I have just exponentially grown because of the loss of my mother. And the mother and the money that I am receiving was built on the backs of underprivileged people, generational wealth for sure.
Mhm.
In fact, one of the American dynasties of generational wealth. So what do I do with that, and how do I it's it and my partner and I have these conversations because he's like, um not wanting me to give money out, just willy-nilly to people because it- that's not healthy either. And I'm like, well, I didn't earn this money. I mean, this is, you know, this is the closest thing to reparations that I can do as a human, individual human. And so I'm just like, I have it, so let's give it. Somebody needs it, and let's give it out. So yeah, it has lots of feelings attached to it, especially
Yeah.
given the unpacking that I've been doing in my life and my awakening in the past, 7 or 8 years. It's like, and I tell my daughter all the time because she's not intending to have children, and I'm like, okay, you're not going to
Ah.
be one of these women
Oh,
that's going
wow.
to give away your money to your cat. I said, you need to You better
Please,
identify
no.
organizations and causes that are important and you give all that fucking money away. Don't you die when that is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so we've already been having those conversations because I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that you've left all this shit to your cat. You need to give that
Yeah,
money away. If you're not going to have kids,
please.
then, use it for something valuable and something good
Hmm.
to make the world a better place. Don't just sit on it. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, and that's a cycle that we need to see more accountability towards, right? Like that you can be in this space having the resource that you have and having a generational conversation with your young people considering what her plan is. And we know plans change all the time
Oh
in
yeah.
life.
You've been telling me
Know what
since
that
she
to
was
look like.
two that she was not so I
Not
am
gonna
not
happen.
holding my breath.
Maybe not from her womb, but like let's say she gets partnered up with somebody, you know what I mean, that has a child or
She,
whatever life
she
could possibly bring. But
right,
it in that though, there because I do know another wealth human being who acquired a lot of wealth and spent a lot of time trying to identify how they could pay back what they thought was equitable in value. And if I'm curious because I've had a lot of conversations with funders, and I do think that that is the ultimate goal. We know that there's those funders though that have additional or funding sources, I should say, in entirety, not funders, but
right,
funding sources that have the benefit of we're going to give this percentage away for like a tax break. And so there's that, like, oh, let me just help myself
right,
in doing this thing. But then there is, I believe, folks that get into a space of the resources that I have, I really want to make sure that it is going to causes and issues that are going to create and make us have a better world.
right.
And what does that look like in this time period? Like, what are like the funding priorities going towards? I hear there's a lot of things about pluralism, which is like kind of a collective ideology of people from different backgrounds and all of this living and working amongst each other in a
Mhm.
collective way. And I appreciate thinking about funding dollars going to that. And I am also curious about how the resources are being limited because there's this association with if it has anything with DEI, we don't want
Right,
those type of
right,
legislative priorities now to impact how we have income into our own personal professional businesses and corporations and all of that kind of stuff
right.
to then not make sure to make sure then that that money that is given away for tax benefits is still available, right? Because
Yeah,
companies are not getting dinged by participating in, you know, initiatives that are being outlawed that actually help us to increase our bottom line. So
yeah.
all of those things are like really very in your face impact that's happening right now.
Hmm.
Looking at the world leaders that are existing and kind of what we see that our humanistic culture is kind of leaning towards.
Hmm.
And how are we going to spread resources and share resources? Because it's going to get to the place where that is going to be critically necessary.
You actually got me thinking about whether or not I might be able to organize or put together something that could create an opportunity to fund, you know, things on a more like, huh?
Yeah, yeah, a
On a
collective
more
of
like
folks that
organized, not just write a
mhm,
check for the, I mean, just, but like, yeah,
a collective, some type of fund.
yeah,
But go from like if there's like an abundance of wealth and we know that there is going to be an increase on the investment on whatever the wealth is, there are some different funding streams. But anyway, this is not what we need to talk about the weeds and the details of that
yeah,
on this conversation. But it is to be like, how do we envision and think about what it's going to look like for us to shift this narrative of existence that we exist in right now and figure out how we can collectively
right,
support each other
right.
with those with resources and a conscience and accountability because not everybody is going to want to participate in that way, but there are some really good models that could be helpful
Yeah.
to a
Maybe
lot of communities or to like spark some seeds of inspiration for making sure that wealth and resources are shared out. It's critical. It's critical. because we're exhausted wherever you lay in the space, right?
Right.
It's like a moment of exhaustion because we're looking at all things happening. Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that I keep hearing is talking about building relationships and creating the, shoring up that collective, because we've got each other has is all we've got. If empire is falling, which, I hope it is, what does that look like? And what's going to be left, and how
Mm,
I know that given, I mean, I'm given the resources that I know I'm going to be having in the next 6 to 9 months, uh, what can I do with that to try to, that feels like a better use of my energy and time than to be
hmm.
in all of this wealth and feeling all of this guilt about all of this wealth.
Yeah.
Let's do something about it. So, which is what I've been telling my daughter. So I also need to take my own advice. So, yeah.
That point, and I want to come back. This is wonderful full circle because to have a conversation in the future about like, mother-daughter relationships
Mm.
would be so much fun. Maybe we could have our daughters come on
Oh,
with us if they would
I
want
don't
to,
know.
but
I don't know. Ask her.
that
My doctor's like, no, mom, I'm not going to do that. So I don't
right. And if mine go in, I'm like,
know.
what? What did I like? What was that?
Yeah, I know. They're probably already going, God, I can't believe my mother's doing a
There you go.
podcast, so that
No,
generation
they love it.
embarrassment.
I
So,
think that they value the conversation if they ever get a chance to listen to it because young people
yeah,
are busy now too, like trying to figure out life because, you know, we've seen a history happen where young people can't leave home in the same way because it just cannot afford to be
yeah,
living. Like families have to live together to actually sustain and pay all of the bills. And you're seeing more people who are U.S. born having to do that. We've been able to observe that when migrant folks come over, and a lot of people are in one space until they
right,
are able to create some prosperity for themselves. But you're seeing a lot of more U.S. born humans that we have a culture where everyone, you know, grows up and moves out and
right,
does their own thing. But interestingly enough, in other cultures, folks grow up and like kind of move on top, not move out. Like I
right.
experienced that in
I think we talked
in
about that
in a
before. That
couple
it
places.
really
Yeah,
is a
man.
thing
Yeah.
to like spread out and disappear from
Hmm.
each other, and have generations living so vastly away from each other that they
Away
can't
from each other.
even that they don't visit, and they don't have the same level of relationship. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not unusual for other cultures to live together in
Right
this.
with each other.
Yes,
Just build a bigger edifice to accommodate
right.
everyone.
Just keep
I
adding.
love seeing that in Egypt, like having, like seeing buildings like at either 2 stories, 3 stories, 5 stories, or 6 stories, but then always having the cranes going up. And I'm like, why do you guys do that? I thought it was a New York thing, like where you have those little spikes that the pigeons, but I'm like, there's no pigeons that I really am seeing around Egypt. And then they explained that to me that it's just they build up for the next family member who is going to
Oh wow.
have their own home. And so when I went into the homes in Egypt, then the staircase is open, so you can kind of look up all the way. And then as you go up to each floor, it's the different family members in the house going up. It's a
That.
very cool thing. And then dinner happens all together in a very communal way. Childcare, sharing, and schooling support and stuff like that all happens in a very communal way. It's something that I really, really love. And we organically are going back into that in the US because people can't afford to live.
Because
But
we're
it's just something about like kind of sharing resource of family and care that is really, really beautiful. So as we're getting into this space of like this division of wealth, and people are going to have to, I mean, just historically, you become more tribal because we can't live on an island by ourselves. It's not sustainable. You see this more shared community living space. And so it'll be interesting to see what the social dynamics become from that.
yeah. On some level, it's almost like those of us in the U.S. are going to be forced, doesn't feel like the right word, but circumstances are going to create it so that we have to learn how to live communally. And you and I have talked about
Of
how
course.
whiteness doesn't, or and not to make it all about not centering whiteness, but we just don't have the skill set to do the communal thing. We're individual.
Mhm.
What did you call it? Remember that phrase?
Collective individualism.
Yes.
Said it. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
how
yeah,
we
yeah.
know how to do the collective, only on an
Yeah,
individual
on
basis.
an individual basis.
Yeah.
Like I like the same thing that you like, but my way.
We're still gonna have our own space. Yeah.
Our own stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's shifting. That surely is.
Well, circumstances, the universe is telling us that we have to do it differently, and adapt, or it's kind of like the Borg if you're a Star Trekker, assimilate or die.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, assimilate or die.
Resistance is
There
futile.
you have it.
Although I don't believe in that, because we have to keep resisting, right? Otherwise
Absolutely.
we'll give in. So great.
Resisting, resilient, and joyful if we can
Yeah.
be. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Why do I give a fuck? Why do
Thanks for
I
joining
give a
us.
fuck?
Until next time,
Why
as you
do I
move
try
throughout
so
your day,
hard?
continue to ask yourself,
Why do I give a fuck?
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Diane. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.
Why do I